He went to a closet and pulled out a box of pre-printed Rolodex cards, and they had his information printed on it. In addition to the fact that I knew that not many attorneys were using Rolodexes anymore, the phone number was wrong.
Can you tell us about some of the biggest misconceptions that expert witnesses have about marketing?
This is probably one of the most common questions I get. And in fact, I write a lot for my website, and I have an article dedicated to that question.
We are stepping behind the scenes of the expert witness world. Not into the courtroom, but into the business engine that powers it. My guest is someone I like to call the expert witness whisperer. Beryl Vaughan is a marketing shaman for medical experts, part strategist, part brand architect, and part confidence builder. She's the secret weapon behind some of the most compelling expert witness websites, marketing materials, and visibility strategies out there. If you've ever wondered how some expert witnesses seem to always be top of the mind with attorneys, or if you're struggling to build your own practice into something that feels intentional and credible, this is the episode you've been waiting for. Beryl helps medical experts translate their deep clinical knowledge into magnetic, trustworthy brands without crossing ethical lines or feeling like they are selling themselves. Today, we are digging into what works, what doesn't, and what every expert witness needs to hear if they want to grow their business in 2025 and beyond. So with that, let's welcome Beryl to the show and ask her background story, what makes a great expert witness website, and what should experts be looking out for when they are venturing out and trying to get into the world of expert witness testimony. Beryl, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here, and I know we've been talking about doing an episode and talking about what works for experts, what doesn't work for experts in the age of digital marketing. But before we dive into that, can you tell us a little bit about your background? What brought you into this niche, working with medical expert witnesses specifically?
Thanks. Yeah, I started out many years ago as a paralegal, and I worked for 20 years in some excellent law firms. And learned quite a bit about law. I learned a lot about what attorneys care about and the personality of attorneys and the personality of litigators, who are the people who primarily hire expert witnesses, and sort of saw things from their perspective. I live in the San Francisco area, and everybody is commuting forever to get to jobs in San Francisco. So I decided I didn't want to commute anymore, and I looked for a job closer to home, and almost completely accidentally landed in the practice of a forensic psychiatrist who had been in practice himself for 45 years. He had taught about his field. I mean, he was really the guy to learn from if you wanted to learn about it. So that's what happened. And I loved it. And in that time, I almost immediately started doing some marketing for him. And he was just the kind of guy whose attitude was, sure, go ahead, do what you think. And we doubled his practice income in probably 2 years. When I asked him in the first week or two, gee, what do you do for marketing? And he's from a different era. He went to a closet and pulled out a box of pre-printed Rolodex cards. For anybody who doesn't know what Rolodexes are, they were sort of like contacts lists in the olden days. They were little cardboard cards, and you'd flip through them. And they had his information printed on it. In addition to the fact that I knew that not many attorneys were using Rolodexes anymore, the phone number was wrong. So we were going to have to go through with a blue pen or something and cross it out and write. I mean, like, you couldn't get less professional. Mail it to all these people, figure out how to do it. I mean, it was a terrible idea. So then I said, well, do you have a website? It's 2007. Like, there's a reason to believe somebody would have one. He says very proudly, yes. So we go to the website, and it's just a brown background and a paragraph about him. That's the whole thing. So I said, okay, we're going to have to turn this around. And I loved it. I did a lot of things. I read 100 reports. I met 100 attorneys, even more than the ones I already knew. But the marketing is what I enjoyed, partly because of the tangible results and partly because it was just something that I seemed to be drawn to naturally. After 10 years of working with him, I decided to go out on my own. So for the last 7 years, I've been working as a private consultant, one-on-one with medical expert witnesses, and occasionally someone who's not a medical expert witness. I ventured into someone who was a hedge fund expert witness, and I found actually when I did work with people who weren't doctors that many of the same techniques worked for everybody. Because the fact is that the reality is attorneys are looking around and they don't know how to find something as unusual as an expert witness about the unique thing in their case.
Yeah.
And it's unlikely that they're just going to call up another attorney and say, hey, do you know someone who's a specialist in blah, blah, blah? And that person says, of course, I have this long list. So that's kind of what I found is that the things that work for doctors work for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you have to do them. Yeah. If you don't do them, you might as well be invisible.
So marketing is something that like most experts, if not all, are pretty much afraid of. They're scared of marketing, and especially doctors. So can you tell us about some of the biggest misconceptions that expert witnesses have about marketing or practice development for that matter?
This is probably one of the most common questions I get. And in fact, I write a lot for my website, and I have an article dedicated to that question. And I have to quote the American Medical Association. I have to really explain this is not a bad thing. The reality is, I'm not going to say this to someone, hey, say this on the stand, but I will say it person to person to an expert witness. The reality is you are in business. You have to pay the bills. And if the phone isn't ringing, there's no money coming in. So the goal is to get that phone ringing. But that doesn't mean you have to do it by flashing lights and big advertising and promising the moon to attorneys. That's a big problem that people sometimes do. I'll win cases for you or whatever. You don't do it that way, but you have to do something. So I say practice development. That's what I do primarily because people freak out if they hear the word marketing. Now, the reality is, and this is kind of interesting, as I follow cases, I'm including some of the ex-litem cases and expert witness profiler cases that end up on LinkedIn. As I follow cases, it's not uncommon for attorneys to get an expert on the stand and say something like, doctor or whoever you are, isn't it true you have a website, you advertise in this directory? Well, if they do that, I would argue that it's because their case is weak. Like they're casting about for anything to discredit that expert. It's not because the expert should shy away from that. My favorite quote is from a forensic psychologist. He is a very funny guy, a very charming guy. He appears on TV all the time when there's something in the news. And he handles himself beautifully on the stand. And he told me a story about a situation where an attorney did just that. And he just leaned in and said, hey, I got to feed my kids. Jury cracked up. But that is the reality. You do have to earn money. I would just say as long as you are serious and professional and don't do something salesy, then there's absolutely no reason not to. If you're worried about getting challenged by attorneys, then prepare a few standard answers. You might not be the stand-up comedian this guy is. You might not be able to get away with that, but you prepare your answers, assume attorneys are going to go after you that way, and leave it alone. Because you don't have to justify your existence.
Well, that's true. So there's a fine line between presenting your credentials and presenting your services as an expert witness and becoming salesy. And I guess that is the biggest value that you provide to experts, particularly medical experts. So when you first work with a medical expert, what are the key elements that you focus on to establish or refine their brand?
Well, let me speak for a moment about my order of operations. So first someone calls me out of the blue and I talk to them for sometimes a long time if we just really hit it off, or I think they really are going to be great in this profession or already are. And then if they want to retain me, we do the whole retention contract thing. And then I schedule a 2-hour interview with them. And the goal is for me to learn exactly about not only their practice, but what they like to do, what they don't like to do, what they're really good at, what they really are knowledgeable about. And that will tell me how we're going to market them, because we
Mm-hmm.
are marketing their knowledge base. That is what an expert witness is. Their job is to be on the stand and explain to the jury things that the jury doesn't already have expertise in. So the first thing I want to know is really, what do you do? What is your experience? I'm also assessing, do you seem confident? Do you sound like someone who could get on the stand and really have composure? But I really do need to know mostly, what do they know? What are they really good at?
Mm-hmm.
If they're not really good at anything, I mean, sometimes people will call and say, oh, I work at a hospital. I don't make very much money. I heard about this forensic expert witness gig. I have to take those kind of folks with a grain of salt, because
Mm-hmm.
this is a serious business. You can't just sort of do it on this as a sideline, because your marketing will be serious. See, that kind of takes us into that not being salesy.
Yeah. So let me ask you about this whole gig thing, because a lot of people, and I keep seeing this on LinkedIn, and like, I'm pretty much shaking my head in disappointment every time I see there are some trainers and like people who are trying to get more people into this expert witness work. They would project this as an easy way to make a quick buck. That, hey, do this on the side. This is a side gig. It's like driving an Uber on weekends. But it's definitely not that. It's like, at least I believe that this is a really serious business. Somebody's life is at stake, especially if you're a medical expert witness and you are working in the field of medical malpractice or personal injury.
Or
So
capital cases,
yeah, yeah.
death row.
So
I
so
mean, that's real, right? And it's
yeah,
actually,
it is.
right?
So
Right, it's serious.
anybody involved in these cases cannot be a gig worker doing it on the side for some extra money. Yeah, and I can see what your take on is. But what do you have to say to people who promote this as a gig and as a side gig, and to the experts who think that, okay, this can be a side gig for fun on the side for some extra easy money?
I think if there's actually like Facebook groups and so forth that characterize expert witness work that way.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, if you affiliate yourself with anything that has the word side gig in it, you might run into problems on the stand. So part of my approach, because I'm always looking at things from the attorney perspective, I'm not an attorney, just to get that out front. I'm not an attorney. I just think like one. And I know all the things attorneys are doing from their end, what they're looking for. If you are not affiliated with something that says side gig, hopefully, or you've quit it, you have to be prepared for that attorney question, right? You say the truth, but the point is you dismiss it, because it is always going to make you look mercenary. However, just because you see it as a side gig doesn't mean you won't be good at it.
Mm-hmm.
If you are knowledgeable, and if you went through medical school and residency and all the things that put you through board certification, you know a thing or two about what you do, then you have something to offer. The bottom line is jurisprudence. It's how people use the court system to get some kind of resolution, and perhaps money, or perhaps vindication, or perhaps a lower sentence, depends on all kinds of situations. And whoever is the expert witness is serving that jurisprudence. Anybody who knows something useful can serve as an expert witness, even if they think it's a side gig. I think that people who market this as a side gig, I don't know the minds, but usually they are businesses.
Mm-hmm.
They are serving their own for a price out of your pocketbook or wallet. They're offering you something, and ultimately they're going to make money on it. And maybe you will too, but you don't have to go that path if you don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, so just as a point, a lot of outfits sell email lists of attorneys. And they'll say, oh, we have a list of 5,000 attorneys, 10,000 attorneys, 20,000 attorneys. We'll sell it to you for, pick a number, usually a big one.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just look at that and I say, if only 5 of those attorneys are going to hire you, and those 5 were turned off by your email, those are the kind of things that people get, their inboxes and get filled with those offers all the time.
Oh yeah, I think it's like buying an email list and spamming everyone is the last thing one should be looking to do as an expert witness. That actually reminds me of something that I saw an expert doing recently on LinkedIn. They put out, this is an emergency medicine expert, and I don't remember his name, but he's not very active. He's just recently become active on LinkedIn. And he put out an emergency medicine expert witness kit. And you basically had to provide your email address to get a copy of the kit. And in the kit, he had things like, what questions should you ask from an emergency medicine expert witness if you're deposing them, or if you're
Mhm.
looking to retain them, that kind of stuff. And he was collecting emails of anybody who was trying to download that kit. And then he followed it up with a few emails about trying to teach the attorneys about the field of emergency medicine.
Yeah.
So at least now, as an attorney who receives this email, they have a context that they downloaded the kit and they provided their email, and now they are hearing from the expert. So that I can still get behind, and it seems like a smart thing to do. But yeah, buying an email list is something that you should never do as an expert witness, is what my take is.
I have seen one or two experts. I mean, I received the email and I think to myself, was this persuasive or not? I've seen a few people be successful, usually, as you just said, because they are offering a service that is finite. So attorney's not saying, oh, should I hire this person? How much do you charge per hour? They can just say, oh, if I pay this amount of money, I'll get these things. I think that kit idea is brilliant. When I am talking to clients about their websites, and I write about this on my website, it's almost like I just want people to go there and read and read and read, because they will almost inevitably say, where's that question? So here's my feeling about email lists and emails is, unless you can get the attorney to open that email, then it's probably a waste of money and time. It's a lot of time. So let's think for a moment about emails lists themselves. So we've all been to those websites where you're on the site for about 2 seconds and out pops this big box and it says 10% off or whatever, just give us your email or let us text you. And that's in a consumer setting, buying products. It's not services. But I've been on expert witness websites where they use that. And I think it's a mistake, because everyone knows that they want your email so that they can bombard you with sales. So if you want someone's email, then speak to them and use it to send them emails about your case. Anything. We're back to the salesy thing, right? Like, you just don't want to seem to do all the same things that Target is doing, right? If Target's doing it, do the opposite. So I think, that actually is a very clever approach. I think the fact that it's something finite and serious is great. If that person came to me, I would be very concerned about what's in that kit, because sometimes the kit is like questions you can use to discredit the other expert. Well, if you don't know who the other expert is that really valuable to an attorney? What if you agree with the other expert? I mean, the nature of the business is to be objective. So be very careful, but it's actually not a bad idea. Otherwise, no, I don't believe in spam email.
Spamming's not good. So can you share an example or two on how a strong online presence has transformed an expert's visibility or case volume in your experience?
I have a client, when he came to me, he was relatively new to his profession. I mean, he'd been a physician for about 4 years, had a full-time job, had a lot of training in forensic work. He was a forensic psychiatrist, and to be board certified, you have to do a year of fellowship and so forth. I mean, doctors with that training expect to be in the legal setting. And he had not had many cases. He just wanted to do more of that work and less of the stuff that he did every day in his job. Not that he didn't need a clinical practice, but that he needed a better balance, and he needed a source of income so he could make a switch to something that was clinically a little more suited to his goals. So he had a website already that he had done on Wix, which is a pretty bad idea. Google is on to Wix. They know it's a sort of an amateurish platform, honestly. And so we said, okay, we got to change that. Within a few years, his income had gone up, I would say, about 800%.
Wow. Which
sounds bigger, but we started very low. But it was dramatic. And in that time, the things that we did is I worked with him to build a really useful site, had a lot of elements that are very effective. He was aggressive about his LinkedIn account. LinkedIn is a great platform. And so he would post things, and as I would recommend to anyone in the expert witness business, the way you make LinkedIn more effective is A, you connect to a lot of attorneys. That increases the chances that your post will end up in front of attorneys. And you post on a regular basis, and there are marketing techniques to what time of day you post and which days of the week. All of those can make a difference. How you build up your connections is a sort of an art form as well. And he just posted on a regular basis and added lots of attorneys over time. And he got cases from LinkedIn, and we put him in some of the best directories, only a few, but there are some that are more effective than others in producing cases. We just splashed him in a variety of ways, and it made a big difference. We did it. When I say splash, I just mean it was impossible for an attorney to not find him. That is the goal. From there, I have to kind of hand it off to the doctor. I mean, if they can't handle the call properly, or they turn people off, or they accept cases and it just doesn't go well, I can't control that part of it. Although sometimes I coach people a little bit if they just need a little bit of something tweaked. And it just was incredibly effective. And he now is adding people to his practice. He continues to be a clinician, which is extremely important for expert witnesses, is to continue to have a day job doing the thing that they are an expert about. That's across the board. Doesn't matter who you are. Mm-hmm. And because attorneys want to know, are you in the trenches doing what you say you do? That whole thing about advertising. I mean, the big term that everyone's afraid of is a hired gun. Yeah. If you do 100% forensic, and you rely 100% of your income on getting cases, you're much more vulnerable to the hired gun accusation than if you have a day job that includes the thing that you are an expert about. So anyway, all those things are very effective. Mm-hmm. Did something similar with a very different kind of expert witness, very different personality, different goals, different areas of expertise. Some of those things we did some tests. We tried some things that looked effective to see if they would be effective. That's part of marketing. And it was also successful for him. He also went from no forensic cases to about an eighth of his practice is forensic, which was his goal.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So what really makes a good website? Like, anybody can build a website today. It takes minutes. Yeah. Like practically minutes to build a website. But just because you have a website and just because an attorney can come to your website, that doesn't mean that they're going to retain you. So being found versus being retained, or even getting that first call from the attorney, there's a huge, that's a big chasm. So what do you think makes a good website, a good expert witness website stand out versus one that gets overlooked?
So one of the interesting things about that question is that I hate that there may be a perception that I'm a website builder, partly because what you just said, their website builders are a dime a dozen. They probably, in fact, I would say 99.99% don't know a thing about what you do for a living, you, the expert witness. And I do a lot of things as a marketing person. The thing is, though, we all expect to find a website when we're looking for some kind of anything online. I was looking for the menu for my favorite burrito place the other day, and there was no website online. So now I couldn't find the menu. So now I had to guess, and that would have been a small thing they could have done. Here's the thing about expert witness websites and about rubber stamp websites. That's what I call them.
Yeah.
If you don't have any search engine optimization, if you don't have any presence on the internet, then the only way a person is going to know about your site is if they know you. Yep. And in fact, I've encountered doctors who you could put their name in and their website was called their name and you could not get to their website. Yep. So at that point, it's just a business card. Mm-hmm. Which isn't bad. I mean, it's nice to be able to say to an attorney, you want to learn, here's my about page or whatever, get my downloadable CV, whatever it is. But it's not a business generation tool. Yeah. the biggest mistake I see is I call them the 3-page sites. It's like the home page, the about page, the contact page. Most people overlook the privacy policy page. That's going to be a trickier thing to navigate, but Google does give an advantage if you have a privacy policy. But you have this basic 3-page site. Think about what the attorney is looking for. Are they just looking for someone with a phone number? Yeah, maybe. That's certainly going to be part of it. But they need to know about the thing that you say you know about. And although you can list all of your credentials, which is what most of those sites' bios do, the schools they attended, the board certifications they have, the areas of expertise, this is like people have a little list and they all have the same list. That doesn't tell the attorney that if they put you on the stand, you're going to be knowledgeable. So your website really is not going to perform well and get you cases unless you have content that discusses the very thing. So I'll use this doctor who I was just discussing, who had such a successful result from his marketing. First of all, I want to point out too that he was on board with it. He pursued the LinkedIn. That investment in promoting the practice it becomes very valuable in a variety of ways, but partly because now you're the person, you the expert, or the person the attorney is hearing from, not who knows, your staff or something. So at some point that attorney is going to say, I wonder about this person's website. So we were talking a little bit about LinkedIn. I mean, there's on LinkedIn, on your profile, there's a place where you can visit my website. You have to know to check that box. It's not like everybody's just going to go on LinkedIn and do a few things and have great success, but there is an order of operations and tools that are there. So at some point, the attorney's going to want to see your website, or they're going to hear about you and they're going to look you up. They have to find something, and your website is where you have maximum control over what they learn about you. Content's crucial. So in the case of this one doctor, he has specializations in psychiatry and brain injury medicine. He wanted more undue influence cases and testamentary capacity cases. They're very interesting. Actually, when I was a paralegal, those many years ago, I was in trust administration primarily, and estate planning and probate. And if there's a lot of money on the line, expert witnesses are needed. 9 times out of 10, testamentary capacity cases are about dementia. That's just a reality. Undue influence cases are a little more interesting but they also can be about how vulnerable was the person. Now their will is being contested. There's millions of dollars on the line. Nobody called the expert witness unless there's millions of dollars on the line. Yeah. So what we very intentionally crafted an article about understanding dementia, and then used as examples and posted it in the context of testamentary capacity. It was a very knowledgeable article. He talked about different types of dementias, causes of dementia, treatments, how it plays out. It changes people's competency, and clarity changes from day to day. If it's a day that the will is signed, and how would one go about demonstrating that to a jury? That was the article. Had we not had that article, it wouldn't have brought in as many cases as it did about that topic. We have other articles on his site, which he's written. And that becomes important in terms of credibility, because you may be asked on the stand and you don't want to say, oh yeah, ghostwriter wrote this article. I really wrote it. About other things not related to dementia, not related to brain injuries, but other things that he knew about. The point is, we wanted attorneys to arrive at the site however they did. We planted the seed in a variety of ways, and then say, oh, this is a good person to call. Right? And that's content really drives that stuff. In fact, some of my job is imagining what is the attorney looking for, because there aren't good tools for any amount of money that will help you with that. In fact, I've had clients say, well, what kind of things should I put on my site to increase traffic? And the answer is sort of like, if I knew that, would be a millionaire, because Google is not letting people know how an attorney is finding a particular expert witness. It can only tell us how often someone uses a certain kind of search. And there are some services I've tried out, not cheap, that claim to tell you those things and have that research. And so I tried it. And the reason I didn't sign on is because I would put in something like an attorney would look for, emotional distress after a car accident, expert witness, and it would just say not enough data.
Yeah.
It was really set up for e-commerce.
Yeah.
So in my case, this is why I call it an art form. I think, what is the attorney looking for? How are they phrasing it? So I could put in, they're probably going to say expert witness about something. And I'm just going to use as an example, PTSD expert witness, because PTSD is something attorneys like to diagnose. So this is where we're back to, how's attorney thinking? I mean, attorney may be doing everything wrong. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that we understand what the attorney is thinking and provide them with, even if what we're providing them with is, you're wrong. I mean, maybe you don't want to be quite obnoxious about it. So here's the thing that happens. First of all, in the last 6 months, Google has made its AI overview its priority. Yep. That's why it gets this juicy space at the very top. Yep. All SEO about making a website come up early has just gone out the window. I think it's something like 60% of people are just using the generative AI, and maybe 40% are continuing to look for a website. So now the goal is to be in this generative AI, which is someone's written something. Google's tried to figure out what you want to know. And it has a little link here or a little thing to the side that will take you to that answer. In a perfect world, your website would have answers to questions that attorneys are asking about your area of expertise. Yeah. And that would come up. And with some of my clients, it does. And in some of the cases, it doesn't. So there's this new sort of marketing initiative, it kind of cracks me up, called ATP, Answer the Public. The idea is you craft your content in a way that's informative. And I actually believe that education is a marketing tool. If you're educating attorneys, that tells them you can educate juries. And if that is underpinning all of your other marketing, then it will help you, amongst other things, with this generative AI. So I'm looking at this and I'm saying, a client has this website, but how am I going to get past this? They're not established enough. Their answers didn't specific enough, and it didn't get picked up. Yeah. So now on all of my clients' websites, we are recrafting content to begin with. I mean, at the start, the whole article doesn't have to be about that. A question and an answer. And then we use the article to go into what the answer is and why it is what it is. So I have heard all kinds of comments from doctors about this question. Mm-hmm. How do I get up above this line? Yeah. And the answer is Google cares about you really knowing what you know about. And my answer is, yay, Google. Like, this is Google's made its priority knowledge, not sales. And so this is good, and it's very good for expert witnesses. So I see a bunch of stuff, but what's interesting to me is if I'm an attorney, some of the answers they might not be accurate. That's been a problem Google's had, or it might be boring. And I might go to a site, I might click on something and it's not what I was looking for. So you have to be careful. So before Google kind of improved its AI, one of the questions that would come up, is it okay to accept a lien as an expert witness? And the answer, by the way, is no, it's not okay. It basically implies that you won't get paid unless they win. And so, of course, what if your opinion is that they're not going to win? So I think it's great. And I position these websites to perform in that way. But it's important to know what attorneys are finding. So let's just take a little journey through this experience. So attorneys looking for a PTSD expert witness, but everyone thinks there's going to be a lot of money associated with a PTSD claim. And we're back to, what does the attorney care about? What is the attorney thinking about? They could be completely wrong. It's fine. When they get to that point where they're talking to the expert, that's their opportunity to find out whether, what it all means. I mean, there's all kinds of nuances to that. But PTSD is a very common search term. We've all said it, right? First, we get our generative AI answers, which let's assume they're all tied to, sometimes it's all tied to law firms. I mean, like you're an attorney, you're just going to skip past that. Then you see these sponsored listings. Those are paid advertisements. They appear through an auction process. There is nothing wrong with doing it as long as your little ad is not sales. It's just about board certified, 43 years of experience. Great. But it's expensive. And my experience is there's not good return on investment, but you'll certainly get that top listing. We will go through here. I'll know because I've done this search before. And most of the results will be companies that in some way connect attorneys and experts. And if I am an attorney and I just want to find someone who knows about PTSD, I will just fly past this stuff. And I'll fly past it until I find a real doctor. So for that reason, I do not care as much as I might, or as some people might, about being on the first page. Because this is a unique field where the person and the knowledge they have to offer is the most valuable thing. I mean, they might stop at the mayoclinic.com and read it and it'll be interesting to them, but that doesn't give them the result they're looking for, which is the expert witness. So this whole answer to the public has become important, and SEO is different than it used to be. A lot of people believe that SEO is all about keyword stuffing. You put in the word you think the attorney's looking for and you do it as much as possible. Google figured that out, and now they give you, it's a disadvantage. It's SEO is, there's a reason why it's a unique field of expertise. But I would say that how a website performs does not function in the same way it does for, say, looking for a red t-shirt or something, where you're just looking at the first place or the cheapest place or whatever. It's very different. I don't want the American Bar Association because I know that's not going to tell them about expert witnesses. This, by the way, is the website of the doctor that I worked with for 10 years. We got this great domain, psychiatristexpertwitness.com. And it was because it was 2007. Most of those are gone. And at some point, I'm going to say, as an attorney, let's click on something. And you want to be wherever that is. If you can, if it's the right thing to do. I mean, if it's experts, witnesses are us or something, ignore it. This is hgexperts.com. They come up early, and they produce cases. That's just the reality.
They've been around for a long time.
Long time. Attorneys are very, trust them and get good expert witnesses. And when you do your listing, you have the opportunity to promote your knowledge base and your experience, and not your sales pitch. And we just have to assume that at some point attorneys are going to click on whatever they're seeing. So that's just a benefit of that. I mean, again, I spent a lot of time on the internet looking up things. I think attorneys are how they're going to word things, and trying different approaches. And my goal is there to be an access point to my clients, no matter what the attorney's looking for, as long as it's in that particular expert witnesses court. Oh, I wanted to also mention that some of these are direct, like Juris Pro and HG Experts, are directories where the expert pays to be listed. In other cases, the attorney pays to have access to a database of experts. In some cases, the attorney goes to the referral service and gets hooked up with an expert, and then the referral service marks up the expert's fees. There's all kinds of business models for how these businesses work. One of the benefits of some of these directories is they have a big marketing budget and you don't. And if they come up early because of their marketing budget, but it's you as the response, then that's a good thing. But if we go to PTSD expert witness, we'll go to Dr. Adia, because he's a client of mine, and so I know the most about his listings, and he's really a marvelous expert witness, which makes people much easier to market. Not everybody is suited to the business of getting on the stand and confidently explaining what they know and what they found. But you'll see, here's the thing. Here's this button, visit website. There's no button, no website. A website and no button, the person has wasted their time on their website. However, the attorney might take this guy's name and put it to the side and later look it up. And they're going to expect to find that website. And this is another reason to have it. It's not all about coming up first. And a lot of doctors come to me and say, I want to be first. I want to be the first page. Takes a couple of years of having a website, a good one with new content that's valuable, added in a regular way. In other words, I mean, there's a website that just popped up of someone who is mostly retired, you know. I mean, it doesn't matter that they appeared early because the attorney's going to call and find out that there's no expert witness commitment.
It's like getting six-pack abs. I mean, you can't just go to a gym and hire a personal trainer and say, hey, get me six-pack abs. You have to work on yourself. And
Right.
I think that's the first page of Google is pretty much like that. You have to keep putting new content, a lot of strategy, a lot of work behind the scenes. So yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you on that.
And quite a bit of marketing is understanding the subconscious of the person who is looking for you as an expert witness. It's got everything to do with everything because these attorneys are walking around in all kinds of biospheres with their own interests and their own needs. And we have to figure out for each expert, how will we provide a pathway to learn about you and then a pathway to your phone number. So I would never use a term like emergency medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that most attorneys will use a term like emergency room. I've had many emergency medicine physicians that, it's like, yes, we use the language that we're used to. Maybe it's a paralegal, maybe it's a junior associate, maybe it's a trial attorney, maybe it's a lead trial attorney. We don't know who is doing the search, but they're going to use the language they're used to using, not the language the expert is used to using. So I'll just throw in something, because we were talking about emergency medicine. Okay, emergency room, death, expert witness, right? I mean, we know this is going to be a wrongful death or a medical malpractice case. And the attorney's looking for answers, and they're finding sponsored ads, they're finding directories, and they're saying, I want an answer. I don't want to know about all these things. So they're just going to keep going until they find a website. So that's what we expect. We expect to find a website. It's not the entire case. I have, with some clients, the tools we use are to send a personal handwritten note to the attorneys who are the top referrers of cases to that expert witness that makes a personal connection, that on the back of that note, printed in fairly small letters, because it's not a sales pitch, is their website and their phone number and their name. Yeah. Right? I mean, when it's not a sales pitch, it's on the back. You have to hunt for it, but there's got to be something. So let's talk for a moment about what is on a website. Again, for me, the website must exist. It must be functional. It must be engaging. It must be a destination, but it's not the whole ball of wax for marketing. Mm-hmm. In fact, you got a good article on your website, post it on LinkedIn. It's great. Attorney sees it and they click on it. They immediately have an opportunity to engage with you in this sort of virtual form. And at some point we'll find a real person. I'm not going to click on this because I might, I don't want to put this person in the spotlight, but there's a real person. I'm an attorney. I'm stopping there. I may go to that website and not enjoy it or not engage with it. So
let me ask you a question that just popped at me. All these websites, if you look at the website icons that are being shown in the search results, all the company websites, they had their company logos.
Yeah.
But even the expert's website, where it was a person's website, even their favicon or the site icon on Google was some kind of a logo. Now, do you think that if an expert wants to differentiate themselves by appearing as a person answering the question, then in the favicon, they should use a picture of themselves instead of a logo?
Look,
what's your take on that?
So this is kind of interesting you mentioned the favicon.
Yeah.
The favicon is, just so people know, when you see a tab come up, it's this little tiny picture up here. It can only be 16 pixels by 16 pixels, which is so small that I can't tell you how much time I've spent making things smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And they're hard to see. So you have to think about this just being, it's a branding thing. It's something where
Yeah.
you want, and by branding, I mean an attorney later sees this and they think, oh, it's you and not someone else. Sometimes it'll be a little globe.
Yeah.
And the globe is the WordPress default. And anybody who has a little experience with websites, and I don't mean expert witnesses who are doing it on the weekend, honestly, usually they don't know about this, knows that that is a sheer giveaway that person's an amateur.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, should the favicon be there? Yes. Should it be something easily identifiable? Yes. It's too small a space for a name. This one is a doctor, and he's a neuropsychiatrist, so we have a picture of a brain. This is another doctor, and we have her initial, not because it's the main thing about her. It's because Q is her last name, and a Q is a very graphically interesting, and colors that are associated with her website. The choice of a favicon and also what your site is called is an important one. We're back to this sort of unconscious thing. So there's a nomenclature to how we navigate websites. If we're looking on our phone, we see the three little lines, we know that's going to be a menu. We expect to see a phone number near the top. We expect a menu to have the words home and contact and about, in addition to the other things I have. We hope to find a search feature. These are not all something that your average expert witness who's doing a website, even working with a website developer who doesn't know the field, is necessarily going to know about or think about. This is Dr. Adia's site. I'm going to use an example because it's been not only successful, but I worked hard on it and I love it and I think it's very effective. So let's talk about these features. First of all, expert witnesses almost across the board dismiss the importance of visuals. Humans are extremely visual. We will engage with a picture before we will engage with letters. We're going to look at this face, and then later we're going to go over here to the words. So that's got to be something that says right away, this is what I do. This is what I'm about. I'm about people. I saw a great website for somebody who was an aeronautics expert witness, and it was just a plane, and it was very horizontal, and it was just like, great, brilliant. You've just said right away what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a picture of something else? Often people will not understand that and not think hard and long about what that image is. I mean, I would say in a marketing budget for a website, this landing moment and this image should be at least 15% of the budget, maybe even more. And I would say the hardest thing for me on my invoices is to sort of explain that I actually did spend 3 hours plowing through Adobe stock photo looking for the right thing because I didn't want it to look like a stock photo. I wanted it to look like that person's practice. I needed it to be right. I needed to have copyright and licensing tied up because you can't just go on the internet and grab a picture and say that's cool and put on your website unless you want to get a threatening letter from a lawyer, and sometimes you will, because it has to be just right. And then I will tweak it in Photoshop because it has to go with a color scheme. Or in one case, there was a woman who's a forensic psychologist, so I found a wonderful picture, took me forever, of a woman on the stand. Mm-hmm. And I put a color cast that was suitable to her website. And I made the woman a little bit more like the woman whose site it was. I mean, I made her hair a little bit different color and so forth, because it's a symbolic image. It's not a picture of her, and there was no expectation of that. So these things have to be right. So we go through. Photographs, very important right away, because attorneys thinking right away, how are you going to look on the stand? They don't care if you're beautiful or gorgeous or handsome or whatever, but they do care that you look like you know what you're talking about. So, get a good photograph if you want to be in the business. I've seen LinkedIn profile images where it looked like it was somebody on Tinder. It's like, I'm a doctor, but look at how gorgeous. I mean, it's like, what are you thinking? So this is the opportunity on this site to talk about these credentials and so forth. I'm not saying this is all perfect or anything. Mm-hmm. Everybody will have this kind of services, and people will almost always use these little icons. And if you are making your own site or working with a sort of a rubber stamp website developer, They may overuse that. So in our case, we try and make sure there's always a destination, because it's not just we review records. We're going to talk to you about why that's important, how it's going to be valuable to you as an attorney. Yeah. Hidden information can turn a case on its head. And it's true. So, it has to engage, and it has to be interactive, and images have to exist in order to make it easier for attorneys to navigate and not have to go up here and look at all this stuff. But it has to right away say, this has something to do with the content. Mm-hmm. A lot of people use stock photos that they have not thought about. Yeah. And I get very frustrated when people come to me and they say, I'm already working on a site. I already did a site. And what they mean is I don't need any more work on it with this person. And it'll be someone who doesn't know the business. They've used stock photos that are not relevant. My favorite one is forensic psychiatry. And the stock photo is a picture of a person at the top of a mountain at sunrise, holding their hands up. And it's a photograph that's designed for a clinical psychiatrist to say, after therapy with me, you will be so healthy that you'll be able to embrace the world. An attorney's like, what? I don't get it. Or this is a clinician, I'm in the wrong place, right? So I'm not saying this site is great. Everyone will have a different feeling about it. I mean, that's the nature of art. All I care about is it producing cases, and is the data telling me what's being effective and what's not? If the data is telling me people are not going to one page, then we have to look at, is the page well written? Is the page useful? And is it easy to find that page? That's how the website, these things, data, research, design, all go into it. Some sites are just purely words. Long list. I have a client who attended a really great Ivy League school for undergraduate work. And he was so proud of having gotten into this great school that he always wanted his bio to start that way. The thing is, though, it was like in 1969. Yeah. And it was his bachelor's degree. So what I do as part therapist, it's like, I understand this is meaningful to you in terms of your life goals, but as a bio, not so important. So this content, again, like I said, this is the area that is undergoing major overhaul. So I have been using the answer the public approach. Mm-hmm. And the questions are always, what would the attorney say, not what would the expert witness say? We only talk about the things that suit us. I mean, those things would be things you wouldn't want to say. So I'm taking all of this and I'm changing it into an answer the public form. Can someone with dementia or brain injury sign a legal document? We're back to the testamentary capacity. All this starts with, how is the attorney thinking? What is the attorney's case about? What does the attorney care about? Why does the attorney think they need an expert witness? And sometimes, often, the attorney didn't know they needed an expert witness, but now we're going to explain to them the kind of scenario. So attorneys put emotional distress in complaints. It's boilerplate. Honestly, you would never say my client had this terrible experience, but they didn't suffer any emotional distress. So that's the thing attorneys are thinking about, but they don't know how to prove it. So we're going to explain to them how. By prove, I mean, we're going to explain to them what it is and how the jury is going to decide if there's been suffering. But we can say a person's, has a diagnosis of anxiety and they're going to need this kind of treatment, and this is how it's affecting their life. They've described that they're, have a terrible insomnia and they're short-tempered with their family. Whatever it is, the jury can then decide if that caused them a lot of suffering. So there's a distinction here between legal concepts and medical concepts. Yeah. And that's a great approach for any kind of expert witness site. As a web designer, caused me to say, how can we make this better? I'm an attorney. I may be thinking to myself, this is just called user experience. I find this gray font to be difficult to read. I can tell you that takes about 2 seconds to fix. So this is low-hanging fruit. I'm an attorney. I want to know how to reach this person, right? So I look up here. I find their phone number. Great. It's not clickable. Look, I'm clicking on it. It's not dialing. So I'm on my mobile and I see the phone number. I click on it. Nothing happens. So these are functional things that can be easily fixed. I have an unusual email here. I have to actually remember that that's a lot to ask of people. Usually it's at their domain name. We're back to the language of website navigation. In fact,
Yeah.
sometimes people will talk to me and they'll say, I'm just going to leave his site and go back to us. Sometimes the person will say to me, I'm making good money. I'm happy with my forensic practice. I just like to get maybe some different kinds of cases. I do mostly criminal work. I want to get into civil, whatever it is. And my thought as a marketing person is it enough to say I'm making plenty of money? Or is the question really, what do I want my practice to look like? Do I want to make more money, or would I say no to that? That's fine. But can we be better? Can we be more powerful? Can we take your practice in the direction you want to go? That's our goal.
Yeah.
And this website has to contribute to it because we will be linking to it in a bunch of different ways. But you want to make sure that attorney lands and says right away, I got the point. This is what you know. I understood, and now I want to keep reading.
Yeah. So the key takeaways are visually appealing. Your contact information should be front and center so that if somebody wants to call you, somebody wants to send you an email, they should be able to do that immediately.
Right.
Qualifications should be easy to navigate. And on the aspect of, like sounding and coming across as an authoritative website, I think that I read somewhere that that's also a signal that Google looks for in ranking websites. So authoritative sites are now ranking higher. So if I have the same content as Dr. Adhya has on my site's not going to rank high because the other signals of me being authoritative about PTSD are not going to be there. So that's really important for experts to have that content on their own site. And if there's one thing that you would want experts to stop doing on their site.
Oh, goodness. Not including a photograph of themselves that's professional and high quality. It's a common mistake. People will sometimes just give the phone to a friend and say, take a picture, and everybody can tell. You have to remember, we're back to the visual thing too. You have to remember the attorney is imagining you on the stand. I also want to emphasize for people, it's not a beauty contest. Some people will say, oh, I photographed terribly. That actually isn't the goal. The goal is to look knowledgeable.
Yeah. And
a serious and knowledgeable, not a great smile, right? That's not the point. I have a client who is very young looking for her age. So we had to do photographs that you couldn't believe she was as knowledgeable as she was, as young looking as she looked, even though it wasn't her actual age. So when we did photographs, that was one of the goals, and it had to be there. So that, I guess that's one thing that I feel like people miss as an opportunity. It's very common for doctors to think, A, they can do their website themselves or hire someone who's got a great bargain on it, who doesn't know anything about their field, and it's not accurate. The reality is that marketing is subtle, it's psychological, it's behavioral, and you have to hit all those points with attorneys, as well as convincing them that you're really smart about what you do. And you can't miss any of those points. So if you're not yourself as an expert witness, brilliant at those things, the ability to put yourself in the feet of attorneys, then you should go to someone who knows your field and who can do those things. I just want to make sure you're successful because you're working with someone who knows it. If you are a physician or an accountant or a construction analyst, I don't care what it is, then do the thing you're good at and don't try and do the thing that you may not be that great at. We all have to hand over and give some trust. You mentioned trust authority. Domain authority and trust ranking are actually terms that Google uses. And this is why it's so important for your content to be serious and provide answers, because that's part of what tells Google that authoritative information is who you are.
So on that note, Beryl, if somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that?
There are several ways. First of all, they can call me. I think the best way is to email me because we don't all have time for a phone call sometimes. It's G-O, at forensicexpertpro.com. My website, which is forensicexpertpro.com, is full of not only how to contact me and who am I and all that stuff we expect to find, but it's also full of information that answers, I hope, questions that are the most common ones, but not as an FAQ, but as an entire visual and guiding answer to help people actually get there themselves.
All right. So we will put the URL and the phone number and the email address all in the show notes. And
Great.
I believe you are also active on social media. So LinkedIn is also a good place to connect with you and
Yes.
be a part of your network.
Yes. And I also, once I'm connected with someone, I can invite them to some great groups where people are networking who are in this medical legal space.
Mm-hmm.
I try and help people. I mean, my goal is always to help people get where they want to go. And so we can kind of leverage that as well. But yeah, connect with me. Then you'll see my posts. And plus you can write me and ask me questions. I'm always happy to answer them.
Well, I think we barely scratched the surface today when it comes to talking marketing and especially expert witness marketing, which is so nuanced. And every time I speak to you, it's always a great learning experience. And this one was no different. So thanks a lot for your time. Do you have any last comments before we say goodbye to our listeners today?
I would say doing something is always going to be better than doing nothing. So if you want to get more cases than you are getting right now, it would be odd to expect a different outcome from continuing to do what you're already doing. Consider change, consider expanding and thinking outside your box in order to reach out to attorneys. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah. So doing something is always better than doing nothing. So that is our key takeaway from today. So experts, if you don't have a website, think about getting one. If you have a website that you don't feel really great about, get it reviewed. Reach out to Beryl. She'll be more than happy to help you out. And on that note, we say goodbye to Beryl today. Thank you, Beryl, for your time. It was lovely talking to you. And
thank you, Ashish.
I'm pretty sure we'll do this again sometime.
Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
If you found this podcast useful, remember to subscribe and give us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. This will help other users find this podcast and benefit from the insights shared by our guests. If you'd like to be featured as a guest on this show, please write to media@xlightum.com. See you in the next episode.